now that we're actually recording. Okay, we're gonna edit that out.
Leave that in. That's good.
No, I shall not.
Bit of heat straight away. Bang, 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 bang.
I love that that's your fight thing, and then my fight thing is this, which would be me pepper spraying everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Bang, there we go.
Goodness gracious.
Are you
starting with a bit of heat?
Are you seeing the boxing clips that I'm putting up on Instagram?
Of course.
Oh, my
That's
God.
how I know, like, how far, when we do our camp together, how far can I push as far as making fun of you before you just literally give me an uppercut straight to the foreface, and I'm like, I can't see, and he just punched me. Because I think at some point it's going to boil over where you're like, man, I have this very particular set of skills that I just have to use. Like, and Mike's cool. He'll be fine with it.
It's getting to the point now where, like, I actually kind of want to like spar and get involved, but I'm not man enough, mate. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm not man enough. When you spar in these groups, it's just like, oh yeah, you're a real man, and I just don't want any part of this. But I've been doing it so long that I want to do something else. Do you know what I mean? It's like practicing drums. You practice drums for so long, and then
you want a gig.
You want a gig. I want a gig, but I don't want a gig, if that makes sense. Anyway,
your gigs are a little different in boxing because you get your face smashed in.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah. Anyway,
I feel you, man.
How are you?
I feel you. I'm good, buddy. I'm busy, but good busy. And now, I mean, this is a perfect episode because you and I are both in the middle of planning. So, oh, by the way, the landscaper here at the studio, I told him that I podcast from usually 8 to 9 a.m. So he's going to just come on by with a leaf blower at about 7,000 decibels.
Right.
Just because he's like, oh, you're busy now? Cool. Yeah. And then I'm going to go down to where your car is and I'll just blow a bunch of stuff on that as well. And I'm like, thanks, bro. I totally appreciate it.
It's like,
here's your Christmas bonus.
It's like when you have a baby. It's like you put him down to sleep and, oh, he just goes down to sleep. And then the postman arrives. And then the window cleaner, and you're like, boys, look, what are you doing to me here? What are you doing to me here right now?
Come on, guys. I know that you have your own lives, and you probably have your own kids, and everyone ruined that for you. But don't do it to me. Come on, I'm special.
Exactly.
I'm Eddie Thrower.
Yeah,
I've got one child, named him after a famous drummer, and I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
So just deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get rolling and get cracking, we have to welcome in our new patrons. These are the patrons that joined this week. We absolutely appreciate your support. Justin Mason, Daryl Ralph, Tyrone Dyer, Nick Lowry, Rebecca Sykes, Neil Frew, Eric Shee, and Rowan Wheelwright. Oh, I hope I got those names right. Holy heck. Thank you to all the patrons. So much appreciation to you because that's why this podcast remains ad-free. Yeah. Eddie and I were very shocked early on to get ad offers from different companies because of the listenership, because of you guys. And we were like, oh, it's going to ruin the podcast. So we decided to go the Patreon route, and it's been very cool.
It's been amazing, man. Blows my mind. And I'm so glad it is ad-free because I listened to one of my favorite podcasts. And mate, it's like 6 minutes in, you're like, come on, stop talking about shaving your balls again. Do you know what I mean?
Dude, it's Manscaped has got to slow down. Oh my God.
Who is investing in that company? It is.
I don't know, but it's everywhere. It doesn't matter. I could listen to something that's political. I could listen to Apple News, and just out of nowhere, they're like, "Feel like trimming the burbs today?" I'm like, "No, yes, doesn't matter. I don't want you to know about it." Oh, goodness gracious! But you know, the one that throws me off is when the podcast creators agree to these ads, which is fine. I mean, everyone deserves to make a living off of what they're doing. I'm totally cool with that, but they're not doing reads. They just send their podcast in, and the ad agency decides this seems like a good place to put in an ad. So they're in the middle of speaking and just, I mean, out of nowhere, it's like, well, yeah, you know, I mean, Lewis Hamilton had great control over the car. Do you need to trim your weeds?
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, that just came out of nowhere. I thought we were talking about racing. What happened?
Completely killed the vibe. Completely.
Yeah. So, well, we've got patrons that take care of that. So thank you to all the new patrons. If you'd like to become a patron, we would greatly appreciate it. We are trying to hit a magic number of 200 patrons, and we're getting very close. So if you can, just head on over to patreon.com/drum with Mike and Eddie, and we will get into that. Now, before we get into planning, dude, you had a day.
Oh, I had a day.
Now, I know you couldn't take pictures, but you can talk about it, right?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, long story short, because it is quite a long story, I commented on someone's picture on Instagram, and this person had just bought a Lamborghini, right? And I commented saying, "Oh, amazing." Anyway, I got a like on the comment, and I was like, "Who's that?" And then I got a reply, and it said, "You're next." And I was like, "Haha, I wish." In my dreams, mate. I'm a drummer. Anyway, I went on this guy's profile. He followed me already, so I followed him back, and then he messaged me. And this guy works for Lamborghini, but he was a massive fan, and he is a massive fan of my old band. So he started messaging me, and we got chatting and stuff. Anyway, he invited me to this racetrack called Millbrook here in the UK, which is like I'd never heard of it before, but basically what it is, it's a massive testing ground, a private testing ground where you'll drive through, and there's a few various different stations, and these stations are owned by McLaren, Lamborghini.
Oh, okay.
A few private things as well, but the military, a few like there was a few eco lorries going around the tracks, and there's different tracks. There's like a mile straight, there's a circuit, like a NASCAR circuit, there's an off-road circuit, and there's like a sort of Formula One sort of vibe there as well. And I got invited down to test out all the Lamborghinis, and it was crazy. It was crazy. First of all, I've never ever felt anything like that in my life. I started off in a 4-wheel Hurricane on the mile straight. So you get in the car and you're with this is the funny bit, and I'll get into it. I'll try and keep it short, but you go round in 4 different cars on all the different tracks with 4 different drivers. And these are professional racing car drivers.
Yeah.
So they're talking you through the car and what to do and how to do it. So I start off on the mile straight. So I'm with this guy, and he's a legend, and he's just like, right, as soon as I say go, foot to the floor, give it everything she's got. And I'm like, mate, I've got to warn you, I've never driven a supercar before. And he's like, look, just do what I say. Don't take your foot off the accelerator until I say, and don't brake until I say.
Okay.
So I'm in a 4-wheel Hurricane, right? This thing is ridiculous. Foot to the floor, off. And my head is back. I'm like slamming it, and I'm just going up. I reach 180, and he's screaming at me saying, don't slow down. Don't brake. I'll tell you when to brake. Going 180 miles an hour, and I'm screaming, mate. I'm going, no, wait, I can't. I'm just screaming, I can't. And he is laughing. But the funny thing is, mate, is that you get invited to these events, right? If you're in the market for a Lamborghini, or if you have bought a Lamborghini, if you are one of Lamborghini's
preferred customers,
top clients, or you're like a major celebrity, which I'm neither, So the funny thing was, right, I got in my first car, the 4-wheel Hurricane, and the driver, would just because you have to drive to each of these tracks, and it's like driving around a town essentially, going around roundabouts, letting other cars by, and they sort of talk to you and pick your brain. And the funny thing is that all these drivers, mate, thought I was there because I was buying one of these Lamborghinis. So they're sort of sat next to me going, so, and I'm in like a hoodie and a pair of Jordans, and everyone else is like old, rich, proper money.
Right, yeah.
And they're sort of going,
but you must be the new kid. So they don't know what you do.
They have no idea who I am, what I do. They think, all they know is that I'm there to purchase one of these cars, for £200,000. So it starts off, and they're sort of going, so,
what spec are you thinking about here?
have you driven? What car have you got now? And I'm like, oh, nothing special. And they're like, okay, cool. What? So what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm in music. And they're like, oh, so money happened, did it? And I'm like, sort of just going along with it. Just going along with it. Like, not really, mate. But they're thinking I'm buying one of these Lambos, so they're trying to get it out of me. I do.
Totally.
Because essentially their job is to sell you the car. They've been hired by Lamborghini to sell you that car.
Right.
But it was just,
and it's also funny. It's just human nature to kind of start digging, like they don't know how to say, okay, but how can you afford this? That's what they want to say.
Like cut the shit, mate. What are you're like, what are you doing? You're wearing a hoodie with stains all over it, driving a £300,000 car. I want to know what your deal is, mate. And I'm just going along with it.
They start going down. They'll then go from that to like, so what else do you do? It's like, no, I just play drums. Oh, what does your wife do? She must be. Does she work for Google?
Yeah.
No,
literally.
My wife actually just works with me. Oh, cool. So parents, like, dude, give it up, all right? I'm just,
Mate, it was
look,
so funny.
I got lucky, okay? I'm here because I got lucky. Is that what you want me to say?
Exactly.
Okay, so for anyone that's ever, or that hasn't seen the inside of any of the modern Lamborghinis, they're literally like rocket ships. I mean, you have to flip the switch up to turn the car on.
Oh my God.
I mean, they're very intimidating on the inside. They're not like a modern Mercedes where it's like, oh, this is just going to be beautiful and smooth. They look like fighter jets.
Mate,
I mean, I can't even. Were you scared to even get in? Because they're not easy to get into.
The funny thing was the first car was the Hurricane. So it's like,
it's on the ground.
Literally on the ground. I'm 6'3". And watching me get in that car was I banged my head. I put my left leg first, which should have been my right, and it was just a joke. And then I could see the driver being like, are you all right, mate? Like, surely you know how to. Because the funny thing was, everyone else there pulled up in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Range Rover SVR or like a Porsche 911. So all these drivers thought that I obviously have a supercar. Otherwise, why am I buying a Lamborghini? The funny thing is I've never driven one. I've never driven a fast car in my life. So I'm in the first car and he's just like, start her up. And I'm like, I don't know how, mate.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing.
Like, the start button is covered. You have to lift the latch, right? Like
and
in the center console.
And it's just...
Oh, I can't
and you're
even imagine.
Like, oh my God. And you start off. So I went from like doing 30 miles an hour round a corner, stopping, to going 180 miles an hour straight.
Oh my God.
Oh, mate, it was crazy.
Now, so you drove a Hurricane, was it an Evo or just a straight Hurricane?
It was, I think it was. I don't actually remember. It was a four-wheel drive Hurricane. It was a rear-wheel
drive. All you cared about was getting to the Urus, right?
Yeah, exactly. That and not crashing. Because I tell you what, like that track that went round and round and round, the drivers were just screaming at me, don't brake, don't brake, don't brake. And I'm only going like 50, 60 because there's a lot of turns and stuff.
Still, you're used to braking at 50 and 60.
Yeah, I'm just screaming like, mate, I can't. And I was literally saying like, surely I need to brake. And they're like, trust me. And it was flipping scary. Wow. But yeah, I drove a four-wheel Hurricane, a rear-wheel Hurricane, a Urus, the new Urus, and then the off-road Urus, which was mental.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your dream car, since I've known you, has been a Lamborghini Urus.
Yep.
Now, after driving your dream car, is it still your dream car?
100%. I cannot imagine what it is like getting in that car every day, because it's like there's a lot of room in it. It's like not a normal car, but you put it in comfort.
It's an Audi R8. Yeah, not R8. It's an Audi whatever. Is it an R8? Whatever the biggest, the Q8. Yeah. I mean, they're the same car essentially, but then Lamborghini has outfitted it with all of Lamborghini's styling.
Yeah, and it's like you could picture yourself driving it around town. But then you put it in Corsa mode. And it just drops gears and your foot to the floor. And I went up to about 165 miles an hour in a Urus.
Oh my God.
And mate, I was like terrified.
Were you envisioning Travis in the back in his chair?
The whole time I was just thinking like, what am I doing here? This is so funny because everyone else was actually purchasing these cars. They would get out of one and go.
You said Tom TGE was there, and he's got a Urus.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and he rocked up with
crazy,
a rainbow.
Oh yeah, like his watch. So his watches control his car. So he usually deals in those like $75,000 to $125,000 watches.
Yeah, he had a rainbow Roleon. The
okay.
Yeah, which is like $200,000 or something, isn't it?
Yeah, he's
ridiculous.
His watch collection's a little silly.
So it was all these little things, just like making me stand out like a sore thumb. But it was funny. It was funny, man.
That's so awesome. I hope now you trust in our friendship, because I couldn't have been more happy for you on the day.
Yeah,
Zero jealousy. I was stoked, sending you voice notes. I wanted you to have the best time of your life. Man.
Yeah, man, so. I appreciate it. And I called you, and then that woman said, "Can I just check your camera roll?" when I left.
Oh, that was the best.
Crazy.
We were on the phone.
She's like,
pictures. "Give me your phone right now. I need to see you didn't take any pictures." I was like, "Oh, damn."
I
hope your last 20 pictures are all safe.
I know,
good
mate.
stuff.
I had to think then. I went, "You sure?" I need to cover my ass here, mate. Literally.
All right. Okay, we have lots to get to now. Before we get, by the way, this is an amazing drumming podcast. Obviously,
exactly.
before we get into planning, one last thing on the docket, and that is I actually got a few messages. Some were very kind and some were a little irate from people that played jazz. And they were like, "You said I'm in a cover band." And I was like, "Uh-oh. Oh boy, here we go.
Oh, here we go. Turning the heat up.
Let's Mhm. So let me explain myself just to be clear. I do not think that because you play jazz, you're in a cover band. That is not what I was saying. What I'm referring to is the jazz snobbery that I encountered when I was much younger from people that felt that they were doing something better than what I was doing in my rock band. And my thought was always like, "Hey, I think it's something truly special, no matter what the skill level is, for 4 or 5 kids to get in a room and create something out of nothing." And I don't think that that should ever be looked down upon, especially if that's something that they create moves people. There's an Alanis Morissette song called "Uninvited." It's literally like 3 notes on the piano, but it like moves people. And I think that that's a different side of being a brilliant musician. And so I do think obviously playing jazz takes an immense amount of musical skill, no doubt about that. I was referring more to like, hey, these are my, high school buddies, and they're playing Take the A Train, they're playing Night in Tunisia exactly as it was recorded and written. You're in a cover band. So it's still amazing that you're even doing it, but let's slow down on the ego going into it. When people are in a quartet and they're writing original music in jazz style, of course, that is absolutely incredible and brilliant. But I just think that, I mean, you and I'm sure we've both changed our tunes on a lot of different genres. Even if I see somebody playing a country tune that's like twangy, everything that I'm not into, if it moves people, it's like, and it's original, I'm like, "Hey, man, you wrote it. That's pretty cool."
Mm.
And I think that that's kind of what I was talking about is like that ego that we experience that usually turns people off at a young age to jazz when it's like, "Oh, are you still doing the rock thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still getting in a room with
Yeah.
my buddies and we're trying to create something out of thin air."
Yeah.
Let's slow down on the ego with what you're doing, because you're taking the greatest songs ever written and you're playing them again.
Yeah.
That would be like me being in a Beatles band, but it's like, "Oh, and when we get to the bridge, well, I'll take a solo." It's like, okay, that's cool and that's amazing, but you're not really reinventing the wheel. So for the people, but I did get one. I have to read this because this was pretty cool. I hope he doesn't mind. I got a text from one of our listeners.
Oh, wow.
Let's see if I can. Yeah. Oh man. See, I still don't even I don't know the tone. I will say that the last gift this man gave me was a tomahawk, like a mini axe. So
Okay.
I don't know the tone. I mean, he could be coming after me. This is a really awesome drummer, and he's been to a few camps. His name's Sean Owens. First off, I want to give you a heartfelt thank you for inspiring me to start and complete my latest project. When it was brought to my attention that I was merely playing in a cover band, it hurt for a minute. I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it to you."
Here we go. Yeah.
Here we go. Then I decided to change that. My piano player and I wrote 20 original jazz tunes, some of which are going to be on our new album. I attached a track, blah, blah, blah. Hand speed lessons. Thanks again, Mike. You're an amazing person. I love you, brother. That's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
I'll take that all day long. So, Sean, congratulations. And to anyone that I have offended, I truly apologize, and I absolutely stand by exactly what I said. Moving on.
I was waiting for the Conor McGregor. I just want to apologize to absolutely no one.
I didn't want to apologize. I just wanted to explain where I was coming from.
Yeah, no, you explained it well. You explained it well, man. Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. So this week's episode is about planning, because Eddie and I have a lot of stuff to plan for. From something as small as just a daily social media post to something as big as what we both have coming up next year, which is the UK Drum Show. That's about as much pressure as you can put on a modern day drummer. It's an actual drum festival main stage performance. And so there's a lot of planning that goes into that. And then Eddie is getting ready to plan his first drum camp. He has 2 drum camps coming up this year. I have a few as well. And so we're going to talk about it. So I want to get into something that I don't know the answer of when it comes to the way you see the world and how you do things, is something small. Instagram post. I found you on Instagram. That's always been your main platform ever since I've known you. And I don't know how much planning went into the original sofa sessions or to a current post where you are just kind of showing your practice and you're letting us behind the scenes a little bit. What is the planning? Is there any planning at all?
I think there has to be some planning. I think there has to be. I think like if there's no planning, it goes as far as just, uploading a video of you just jamming. But even then, there's always this sort of like thing in your head about what you want to play. It's very rare that you just turn the camera on and some magic happens and then you're like, oh, I didn't plan that. I put it up. I'll do the same tomorrow. It just doesn't really work like that. I think you have to sort of plan to a certain extent. Even plan to not plan, if that makes any sense at all. That could just be your plan, like to not overthink or not to think at all. But I did actually think, I think when you're running a business as well, like we are on Instagram, you have to. And I think it's more enjoyable if you do, you know? And like, that's the one thing I struggled with in lockdown was with no gigs, with nothing going on. It was very hard to plan what to do, what to film, and more importantly, why. I think that was the biggest thing is like, well, why do I need to upload this, or why should I, or why do people need to see this?
Does anyone care? I mean, you get in your own head about it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But yeah, I think planning is very, very important. I think it's very, very important for creativity, mate. It leads to being able to be creative. There's nothing worse than just turning up at a studio and just being like, oh, I want to be doing something, or I feel like I need to be doing something, and not getting to that point. So I think a healthy amount of planning can just open up so many doors to creativity and opportunity. So as far as an Instagram post goes for me, I'll always sort of have an idea when I'm walking Jackson or in the shower, like most people. And then I'll go and try and execute it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But what happens with me, which is really interesting, is that I have a plan. I'll be like, right, I want to play to this song and upload it. I'll do that and that won't work, but it would lead me to this like pocket of magic.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's always like a plan will, I'm trying to word, if the plan doesn't work, you're always, for me anyway, I've got something that comes out of it. So even if that initial plan, that song, that cover didn't work, it leads me to this something that I have that I can upload, if that makes any sense at all. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, but have I just I froze for a little second there. But yeah, planning.
You did, but you're good.
I always sort of plan to a certain extent, but yeah, planning always leads to something, even if you don't execute your original plan. I said the word plan about 15,000 times then.
I mean, if there's any way that there's like metadata inside the audio of the podcast, I think we'll show up on a lot of planning searches.
My God.
People will be looking for like, I need to make my house plans. Check out Drum with Mike and Eddie because they're planning. That's all they do is plan. Okay, so I think that it's important to talk about the minutia of that kind of stuff. So first of all, do you actually think about the time you're going to post? Do you have all of your hashtags pre-done in a notes section, or is all of it just kind of by feel and like, I want to do this, so I'm going to do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. That actually changed for me. Like I used to do that like pre-lockdown, but the problem with, and I don't know if you agree, like obviously if you're going to use social media, you've got to do you've got to tick a few boxes. There's no point doing it otherwise. Do you know what I mean? You've got to think about,
it's a game. Like,
yeah, it is a game.
You have to play the game.
Exactly, yeah. But I found that actually there was a line, and when I actually got obsessed with like, okay, I'll post now instead of blah blah blah, or I'll use this many hashtags, I found myself chasing the results of that effort. Do you know what I mean? And that actually kind of ruined it for me a little bit. So yeah, I try to have a healthy amount of both. Play the game to a certain extent, but then also have this sort of like, I'll just put it up whenever and blah, blah, blah. Just so I'm not looking for those numbers that add up. Do you do that?
Yeah, and I think I went through the same thing as you, which was I wanted the numbers. There, when you and I first started talking to each other, the numbers mattered a lot. I mean, we were seeing people that had never done anything in their career getting free drum sets because of the numbers.
Yeah.
The industry hadn't figured it out yet. And it seemed like, well, this is we don't know what to do. So this is what we're going to reward people for. And so those numbers mattered. If you and I wanted to keep our status with our companies, we had to have a certain amount of numbers, a certain amount of views per video. We had to show that we were growing on social media. And so I found myself very obsessed with that stuff. And just like you said, it really stole the joy out of it.
Yeah.
It stole all of my productivity. Like, it's so silly. I have students that pay me $30 a month, and then I spend my entire day trying to make content for free. Like, it makes no sense.
I know.
It's like, wait a minute, like these guys are paying. Like, and so I noticed that and this is maybe a year and a half ago, as my obsession with social media grew, actually my website was starting to suffer. So I was getting more views on YouTube. I was getting more likes and followers on Instagram, and I was actually losing money in my business. And then I realized, oh yeah, like why would these people that are paying me money want to keep paying me money if they're like, well, you put all of your effort into social media, so I'll just follow you on social media. And so I had to kind of make that decision. No, these people have supported me. I'm going to put everything I have into that. And then with free time, I'll do some social media. And then I think lockdown, I went through the same thing as you. And then probably around the same time as you and I both, without talking about it all, took a pretty decent break from Instagram. I mean, it was
Yeah.
some stories every now and again, but we went a while. It was like
Yeah.
one post a week at the most. And that was almost like out of an old habit of like, well, I got to do something, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I stopped ingesting content because you and I had talked about that too, like where it just everyone was trying to sell us something. Everyone was trying to get us on their platform, do this, follow me here. And it was like, I just can't take it anymore. And so I stopped. And then just recently, I started using Instagram in kind of a new way, which is I don't think about it at all, ever. Like, I don't care about the numbers. I don't know if I have more followers, less followers. I just know that when I think something's cool, but it's not big enough to make a YouTube video out of, and it's not deep enough to put on my website, I'm going to use Instagram for that. And that's how I started with Instagram in the first place. Because
Yeah.
when I started, it was pictures and 15-second videos. And
God,
it was
15
like,
seconds. You remember
I know.
that? Oh my
I do. I wish it stayed that way. I liked it.
Yeah, it was good.
I could do anything in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So, but so that's and the thing that's really changed is what happens after the post. So, first of all, I post in the morning because the most amount of my followers are in America, so it gives them the longest period to see it. But I don't have a magic number that it has to be at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah.
I don't have an app that tells me when most of my followers are online, anything like that. Hashtags are only relative to the post. I don't care how well they perform. I'm not trying to grow anything there. But the biggest thing is once I post, I maybe check in once or twice throughout the whole day, where it used to be the second someone commented, I was like, oh, thanks so much. Let me ask you a question so you can come back with a
Yeah.
longer answer, which tells Instagram that I'm getting activity.
Mm.
I don't give a shiza about any of that stuff anymore not because you shouldn't care about it, but because it was ruining my day. It was ruining my productivity. And I would spend 7 to 8 hours of productive time staring at my phone, just trying to like boost the numbers.
Yeah.
And I just got to a point where it's like, this isn't what I want to do with my life.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I love teaching on my website. I like doing this podcast. I like doing drum camps. So I'm done. So for me, and I think for where you're at too, Instagram planning has gone way down and it's gone back to a much more natural place, which is, look, I want to share this. This is cool.
Mate,
You know?
I remember when I first started it, there was no planning whatsoever. There was
Right.
there was a sort of like big plan in my head that I wanted to become a drummer and not just be this band guy. But as opposed to like when it came to like posting stuff, I would literally just post whatever I wanted whenever. Like I'd be on tour and I'd take like a cool picture of like, I don't know, anything, and I'd just bang it up. And
Yeah.
I think that's like, yeah, I think that's the route people have got to go down. If people are listening to this thinking, how do I take my Instagram page to the next level? I think like it's really being like just posting what you want when you want. Because I think now with the algorithm changes and coming out of lockdown, that's what's going to shine through. Like just not trying to just have like a hidden agenda, but trying to show, like trying to fake it that you don't, you know. It's like, I think that's where I'm at as well, man. I'm just like posting whatever I want now. And
Yeah, I think it should be what it was for us in the beginning, which like, okay, let's say A good example is we talked about this on the podcast, because of the Netflix show Drive to Survive, I got into Formula One. Well, I got in enough that all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I wouldn't mind some of this in my curated museum, my Instagram feed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go follow some drivers. Well, as soon as I could tell that, oh, you don't have access to your own Instagram page, your team does this for you, I'm not following.
Yeah.
The whole point of was like, I don't know who this person actually is, and I'm hoping I can get to know them through Instagram because I'll never get to meet them in person. And when I could tell, like, oh wow, I think you're actually making your own social media content, and you're letting me behind the curtain, you're showing me a little bit of your real personality, then I'm willing to follow that. And so, if you're a drummer right now, just let people in. It's okay that you make mistakes. It's okay that you don't always look perfect. It's okay that you don't have, great lighting all the time. Like, just let people in and make sure that every post is genuine. Like, I want to share this with somebody because this is happening and it's cool. And, I think you'll have a much more genuine fan base. You and I have talked a million times behind the scenes about 10,000 dedicated true fans versus 100,000 kind of followers. I'll take the 10,000 every day of the week.
Mate, same. I've actually lost followers over lockdown. I think a lot of people followed me from like playing in Busted. I had a lot of Busted fans follow me, and when they realized, oh, this guy literally only posts about drums and shoes, I'm gonna sack him off. And probably a few other people as well. But when I say I mean this when I say it, I just don't care. Like, if someone wants,
if anything, your following has gotten tighter knit.
Yeah,
It's kind of like this podcast where I feel like we almost know. Well, because of the Zoom hangs, we've had all the patrons introduce themselves to us, and it's like, I can't wait till you and I are doing a clinic tour together, and it's like, oh yeah, we saw you on the Zoom hang. And it's like, I'd rather have that than someone say you have 2 million listeners, but kinda, and none of them really care about you guys. And you and I talked about a podcast yesterday through our voice notes up that has, 50 times the listenership that we have, and they have the same number of patrons because they have a massive big number, but there's no depth to it. So I think that with Instagram carrying over to whatever your platform is, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, whatever, I think just being as genuine as possible is the key to planning. Plan out things a little bit, but really think about like, well, I just want to share this. All right, let's move on to something a little bit bigger than a simple social media post. Let's talk about planning a festival performance.
Yeah, that's very, very different. That's different. That's a whole different.
That takes some legit planning. You do not want to be like, I'll just see what happens on the day.
I mean, like, I'm kind of like that. I'm kind of like, I'll see what happens. And even me, mate, I'm like, nope, I have to plan. I have to plan exactly what I'm going to play, how I'm going to play it, and just keep on hammering that out.
Yes.
And it's very difficult because it comes, all your planning leads up to that day. And when you get to that day, and when you're there for the first 10 minutes, your plan goes out the window. It's one of these things where you're like, I've never experienced this feeling, like I've said before, this energy, this nervous sort of anxiety that I've got. I'm going to scrap all those tracks and just play the tracks I've played all my life. That's kind of what happened to me, and that's what did happen to me. But planning starts for me. I'm like, what do I really want to show? What do I want to show people? Who do I want them to see? Do I want them to see like a fake Eddy that I'm trying to impress and, oh, I can play this other genre of music? Or do I want to put on a show and so that's where it starts off for me. And I pick what I'm going to play, and then it's a matter of just planning to practice and play these tracks over and over and over again. And normally I don't really loop stuff. I don't really go over. When I'm learning a song, I'll probably play it twice and then go, cool. But when it comes to a masterclass or a clinic, I am planning to just repeat, because that's the way I have to do it. That's the way I have to do it. What about you?
For me, it usually starts in the middle, and then I go to the ends. So the first thing I think about is, okay, in the middle of the clinic, which is going to take up the most amount of time, or especially a drum festival. Usually a drum festival is very on schedule, so you can't go over. A clinic, you can, they'll always tell you like, anywhere between 60 or 90 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
With a festival, they're like, you have 45 minutes, and then a buzzer will go off and you have to get your ass off stage because, Virgil Donati's coming on right after you. We have to stay on schedule because people have tickets for these times. So with a a drum festival performance, I start in the middle. What is the big chunk of content going to be? Am I mainly performing with a little bit of teaching? Am I mainly teaching with a little bit of performing? So I kind of go as general as possible, and I'll whittle that down, and I'll usually go, okay, I'm going to teach this thing. So now that I know, how about this? You pick the topic. What am I going to teach?
Rudiments.
Okay, so I'm going to teach rudiments. Cool. So that's going to be the block of my teaching. So then I think, okay, what's the candy of rudiments? I have to have some show off, some sparks of this, whatever people would consider to be a boring topic. I have to have some sparks for that. So I'll come up with a couple of those things and like, okay, now I've got 3 mini rudiment lessons. Now I'm going to go backwards in time. If that's happening at, say, the 15-minute mark in the clinic, that's when I start my rudiment clinic. Now, what happened right before that? Well, a track that's heavily centered on rudiments. So I'm going to have a track either written for me or I'm going to find one where the entire groove is based off of a paradiddle diddle or something like that, because that's going to lead me into it. So then I go backwards again. What happens first is my statement to the crowd that I'm here for real. So the first thing I'm going to do on stage is put my best foot forward. Don't close with your best foot. Put your best foot forward in the beginning, because they won't be there for the end if you don't crush it in the beginning. So I come out swinging, play the best thing that I've got to offer. Then that takes up 5 minutes. Then that leads me into my second track, which will be the thing that leads me into the clinic. Then I say, oh, if you guys like that track, I don't know if you noticed, but that whole entire thing was based around the paradiddle diddle. Let me show you some other things that I do with the paradiddle diddle. I teach for 20 more minutes. Then I see if there's any Q&A, ask some questions. I'm prepared if there aren't. And then I play my final track to get out. And then I say goodbye and it's done.
Yeah.
So, but it all starts in the middle for me.
That's
and then I just kind of go out to the edges.
Yeah, I sort of map mine up. I love these podcasts, mate, because I always start off like a waffle. And then you say something, and then it makes me realize, oh, this is what I do. So I learn as I go. Talk about planning. I should have planned for this flipping episode, shouldn't I? But I sort of map my performances out like a gig. You know, like that's what I used to love in the LTA, like mapping out a gig. I think bands like Foo Fighters do it so well, where it's like you said, come out with a bang. A similar track, keep the energy up, maybe don't talk into the second track, maybe don't talk into the third track, then talk a little bit of a down section, back up, end with a banger. And that's what I try to do. To be honest, mate, it's going back to what I know. You know, like I can't, planning for the unknown is so difficult. So like my thinking when it comes to a clinic or a drum festival or anything like that is just, well, plan from my experiences and what makes a good show, because this still is a show. Do you know what I mean? So
totally,
that's
the performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's how I do that. Really, I think of it like a gig.
It is a gig. Yeah, it's a one-person gig. I always tell people that don't know anything about our world when they ask, like, so what do you do for a living? And I'll say, you know, I travel a lot. And then they always say exactly what Lamborghini guy does. Like, oh, what band are you in? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Nothing cool. Nothing you've ever heard of. Like, I'm in, you know, Bob and okay, we're gonna take that out. But I'm in a band that no one's ever heard of.
Oh my god, man! What? That's gonna be on the first Drum with Mike and Eddy t-shirt.
Okay.
What was that? Bob and the McDildos.
Shut up. Okay, at 39 minutes and 10 seconds, I gotta delete that. Moving on. So I'm not in a cool band. It doesn't matter. And then they say, well, so what do you do if you travel? And I say, oh, I do drum clinics and drum festivals. And every time they go, what's a drum festival? And I always say, imagine going to your favorite band's concert, but the band forgot to show up and only the drummer did. That's a drum festival.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. I mean, we come out on stage all by ourselves. There's no one to like help us out. Like we come out and we're in the back and the crowd can barely see us through the singer and the 2 guitarists and the bass player. And now we're out by ourselves and it's just, whew, you're on a Limp Bizkit bus just swinging in the wind. It's just crazy. And so you feel a little revealed there. And then, I mean, you know, you hit a space bar on your laptop and you're off and running. And I mean, my hands are getting sweaty just thinking about it because it's a very real thing.
For everyone listening, I really hope like everyone gets to experience that feeling because it's undescribable. It's like driving a Lamborghini Huracan at 180 miles an hour. You've just got to do it to experience it.
It's damn similar. I got to be honest. I've never driven a Lamborghini, but I do know that every time I've done a festival, the first 5 minutes is me questioning, Wait, am I a guitarist? What
Yeah.
I do play drums, right? Why
Well,
do these sticks feel so sticky in my hands?
the
Like, what's going?
the first minute of me driving a Lamborghini, I was shouting out, "I can't do it." And it's the same when I play a drum clinic. I'm shouting out
Yeah,
in my head, "I can't do this. I
can't
can't
do
do
that.
this. Get me home, get me home." But I had a question, because I feel like the one thing that I really struggle with when it comes to planning, and especially in lockdown, I think a lot of people can relate, is planning on an instrument that is so dependent on your emotions and how you're feeling and how inspired you are. I
Mm,
find it impossible to plan when I'm just not feeling inspired. I don't know about you, and that's where I
yeah.
really struggle with with planning on this instrument, especially when it comes to being in a business and having it put food on the table, and then juggling this thing of like, well, I don't really want to post, but I kind of have to for my business. I'm not feeling inspired. I don't want to plan. I just want to play drums when I'm feeling motivated and inspired, like all these other musicians and artists on Instagram, but I can't because this pays the bills. So when you're not feeling inspired, but you have to plan, does planning help you feel inspired?
Yeah. So one thing that I started doing in lockdown, especially, or I mean, just that whole entire period of the last 18 months, was that I went through the same thing as you, which is like, first of all, most of both of our social media content leading up to the beginning of quarantine and lockdown, most of our content was based around our active professional drumming lifestyle. So, yeah, sometimes I was in the studio, like showing you a little pad lesson, but a lot of times it was me in a hotel, or it was me at an airport giving you a little backstage access, or I was at a festival, or I was planning for a clinic tour. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, 12 months later, I'm still in this same room. Nothing's changed. I haven't even changed my heads because I don't play enough to dent the damn things. So it's like, I just don't want to do this. So, one thing that I started doing during that time was I actually had a social media day, and I did all of my content on Sunday for the entire week. So, I took my matcha picture. So, I had an image. I did a lesson for Instagram. I did a performance for Instagram. I did a couple other images, like, all right, and I'll do a snare drum picture. And I planned out the whole week. And that way, if the inspiration was there, I went with it and I did something fresh. But if it wasn't, I had this backlog of
Yeah.
stuff that was already done. And I just did that a lot because I had to. It was like I was the same as you. I came in, I was honestly, it wasn't that I wasn't inspired to play, it's that I was so inspired to work on my website that and content for that. It's like I can't be bothered to
Yeah.
do social media right now. So, having a social media day and just sitting down and being like, okay, I'm going to look at my grid. Wow, that's a lot of videos on the kit from that angle, but I haven't seen a pad in a while. Okay, let me do a pad video. Um, and like, oh man, the whole thing is shifted to the blue because it's all my studio with my kit. Let me get out of that room. So we'll take a picture out in my lobby and bring some browns into the grid. So a lot of times it's just that.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting. It's
man.
so
So
hard. It's like one of the hardest things to do, mate, as a creative musician or artist is turn it into a living, and then having like those pressures of it being a living, not affect your creativity or
well,
planning.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why people, fall out of love with their passions is because their passions become a career. The career gives them a lifestyle, and then they have to keep up with that lifestyle financially, and it puts a lot of pressure on this thing that used to be their passion. Their passion becomes their job, and then all of a sudden they resent the original thing that was their passion.
Yeah.
And I try really hard to make sure that I'm reminding myself my passion is not the drums. My passion is explaining things to other people. The drums are a vehicle for me to do that. And
Mm.
that way I never resent the drum set. Like I just want to teach. I mean, that's why you'll always find me kind of flirting with other topics like, oh, I'm going to teach astronomy or I'm going to teach, filmmaking or something.
Matcha.
Cause it's like, well, I just need to, matcha. I just need
Mm.
to teach. But I don't always want to teach on the drums because I've been doing it since I was 17 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
now we're gonna extend some of the planning into next week, but we do have to get to our listener questions. I do want to talk about planning a drum camp because Eddie and I are both planning our camps, and Eddie's got two very different camps coming up. The one here at the Mike's Lesson Studio, and then one in Bristol, the Drummer Odyssey camp. Is that what it's called? Drum
Yeah.
Odyssey?
Yeah. I
Drum
think
Odyssey.
so.
Um, and so, anyways, so I want to talk about that, but we'll do that next week. We have to get to some listener questions. So I put out a little question on the Patreon page and said, "Hey guys, I would love to get some Q&A from you or some questions from you, but I want them to be audio questions because we want to involve your voices. So, if you
This
want
is
to be
sick.
able to ask an audio question, you need to sign up for the Patreon group. You can do as little as $5 a month or as much as $12 a month to support this podcast. We would absolutely appreciate it. And then you can send us questions like this one from Daniel Green.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Eddie. So my question is kind of a multiple choice, 3-part question. What album, song, drum beat, or fill made you fall in love with the drums, made you want to play the drums on a professional level, and what of any of those is something that you consider perfect or nearly unattainable, would completely satisfy you if you were able to pull that off in your lifetime? Thanks. Love the show.
First of all, mate,
Damn.
you need to start doing voiceovers. You've got a silky voice there.
That's
Amazon
our boy
Pre-
Daniel Green, the very first guest we ever had.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Whew.
Great question. Where do you even start? I think one of the points a part that made you want to play drums, or
Yeah.
mate, it was Metallica for me. One.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I was literally blown away. I remember buying And Justice for All I think I was in Spain or France or somewhere like that, and I bought the album, put it in my CD player, and I didn't know what was going to go down, but I heard that song, and it just changed the game for me. That part, I was like, I mean, that was the first breakdown I think any band has ever done. I'm sure metalheads will correct me on that one, but I'm pretty sure that was the first breakdown. And it got me hooked. I think it's just timeless.
It was also one of the first ones that was a hit single. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing is I always talk about, like, when people ask me like about drummers and like, I don't know, famous drummers, I'm always thinking about, well, it's just really hard to show off on the drums and get on the radio. So, you know, these drummers that are like Uber drums, they've always been there. You just never heard of them if you're not into the drum game. And to have something like that, where it's like, okay, there's double bass coming out of my car speakers on the pop radio station. What is
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
That was
crazy.
a big deal, man. That was a really big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be the drummer I am today without One by Metallica, because of how much I practiced to try to do that with one foot, because I just couldn't afford it, or my parents couldn't afford a double pedal at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that those are the coolest things in the world. It doesn't matter what it is, but whatever got you to sit in a room for 8 hours instead of 8 minutes, all the credit goes to those drummers and those bands that did that for us. Because I just wouldn't have grown as fast if I was just sitting there with stick control or with syncopation, the book, as I did with an album. You know?
Yeah, 100%, mate. The influence of just a beat or a feel is crazy. And then I feel I sound like a broken record, mate, but Travis Barker, First Day. That is First Day, I think. Even that, it's like that one feel, I'm still, every time I play it now, I'm like, oh, that needs a bit of work. That one feel, that like 3 seconds, 5
Chasing it.
seconds has lasted a lifetime, you know?
Yeah. I think for me, it would probably be the album would be Face Value. It was Phil Collins' solo debut album. You know, I don't even remember as a kid if he had officially split from Genesis or he was just kind of allowed to do his own solo thing. But it was Face Value, and the song was In the Air Tonight, and it was not the drum fill. The drum fill was amazing, but even as a kid, it didn't take long for me to get out my rototoms, go doom 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 doom. Yeah, I figured that out pretty easy. I just loved so much the 4-bar phrase after the fill. Doom doom ka doom ka doom ka doom doom ka. You know, and it was 4. I mean, I don't remember it by heart right now, but it was 4 bars of kick and snare. And I just remember having to write it out because I couldn't memorize it fast enough.
Mhm.
And man, like, playing the fill was great, but coming into that groove and locking to this album for 4 bars straight, it made me feel like I was in the band. And I played that every day. As soon as, I mean, I would be sitting in school as a 4th grader, 5th grader and just looking at the clock like, okay, 5 more minutes until the bell rings. I get on a bus. I'll be in my garage and I'll be playing In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins. Like I could not wait for that.
Yeah,
you
man.
know. And I think, like I said, I think that that's what we all, especially as educators, we have to be very respectful to our students for whatever their Lars Ulrich, Travis Barker, Phil Collins is for them. And it's like, I don't get to tell you whether the person's good, bad. That's not up to me. Did it get you to practice? Then I'm all for it, man. All for it. Just get in a room and play. I don't give a crap what it is. I don't get to tell you like, oh, but you should check this out. You know, if I find like a really beautiful gateway from whoever you're listening to the next step up, I'll happily show it to you, but never by slagging off your idol or whoever got you into it. You know. So all right, moving on. Next question is from Micah Pounders.
What's going on, Mike and Eddie? Quick question for you guys, nothing too serious. If you could acquire or steal one of the drumming skills that your podcast partner has, what would it be and why? Thanks, and see you guys soon.
That is a fantastic question. I love that. Great question. It's hard to pick one, to be honest. I think the syncopation and like 4-limb thing is something I envy massively. You know, watching you play all those fills, I can't remember what post it was. It was something you started off with the caption, all these chops, or maybe not, or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And like you've got your left foot going the whole time, and I'm like, mate, to play those fills is one thing, and then to have your left foot going, and then it's just a whole nother thing. Massively overlooked. And I just think the touch. Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Well, first I would take the opportunity to drive a bunch of Lamborghinis for sure. I want that. Whatever.
By the way, when you're over, we can make it happen.
Bro,
honestly,
count me in. Now, here's the problem. Are they all right-hand drive? Is the steering wheel on the right-hand side of the car?
The off-road one was actually a left-handed drive, which was weird. Very weird.
Okay. Because I'm going to need that. I'm not driving at 180 miles an hour on the wrong side of the car. The other side, not the wrong side, the other side. Okay, so I know exactly what it would be. It would be your patience. It's something that I just struggle to comprehend when I'm watching you play, how willing you are to let something breathe when I know what you have at your disposal. I know the chops you have. I know that you could light Instagram on fire at any moment that you wanted to. But the willingness to stay, and you're not doing it for Instagram. You actually love that stuff. It's like, you know, I think that you and I are both at a level where we could probably do most of what we would see someone else do and that we like, but it might not be natural to us. So yes, I could lay down a fat groove with tons of space in between every note, but it would be because I forced myself to do it. I think you actually dig it. Yeah. And you're willing to put the chops on the shelf for a while. And so I would definitely take, if you had my 4-way independence and touch and I had your space,
yeah,
whatever.
We're talking game changing. Yeah,
whatever.
I think that. Well, mate, I appreciate it, and I think that comes from just playing in the band. You know, just like learning drums as I'm learning to be in a band, and that just gave me that space. But yeah, I appreciate 100%. That was such a good question, and it's so sick hearing the voices of people. You know,
it's the best. Love it. All right, next one from Ryan. I never know how to say the last name, but I think it's Ryan Cowell.
Hey, Mike and Eddie. It's Ryan Cowell here. Thanks for doing what you do. Here's my quick question. So I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat where we haven't played out in over a year. We'll be going back to start playing some gigs soon. I know myself, I have a live streaming gig at a local club in a few weeks, and it'll be the first time I'm playing with anybody in person in over a year. So any tips or things you can think about how to deal with the first time on stage after a long time? All right, thanks. Bye.
Ryan Cowell. Now I know how to say his name.
Ryan Cowell. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to calm yourself. You have to understand that you're just going to be super amped. So this is not the time to be backstage listening to Slipknot and drinking Red Bull. Don't do it. Like you'll have enough adrenaline. Adrenaline will not be your problem for this. So I think that it's really important that you kind of calm yourself going into it. And then most importantly, we've said it a million times on this podcast, but preparation equals relaxation. The more you prepare, the more relaxed you're going to be, you know?
Yeah. 100%.
What about you, buddy?
Yeah, 100%. Just hammer out the tracks so you know them like the back of your hand. And then I think also just plan to...
what was that word? Plan?
Plan to... actually, I feel like I should use a different word. Allow yourself to accept that you are just going to be a little bit nervous. I think that's so important. I think like you can do all the planning in the world, and I think that is important. Do that. Plan, practice. But then also just accept that you are going to be a little bit anxious and a little bit sort of, you know, you're going to have these anxieties, but that's normal, man. And I think
that's a really great point. Allowing yourself to accept it is so important. And I think it's funny, like, we're giving Ryan advice, but that advice definitely goes to you and I for the UK drum show or whatever our first clinic is. Like, look, man, you can't think that you're going to just have 2 years off and just be like, what? This is what I do. It's like, no.
Exactly, man.
Just like a band going back out on tour. It takes you guys like 4 or 5 shows to get things going. You kind of have to get new blisters. The blisters have to go away. You get new calluses. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we can actually start the tour.
But it's like going for
date 6.
It's got like going for a jog. Like I don't really run that much. I try to, but it's always one of those things. Running for me is like this consistency thing. You know, like running only gets easier the more you do it, and the less you do it, you know, it's a big difference. You know, we've all been there where you haven't gone for a run in a long time, and you go for your first run. You're always shocked at how bad and how hard it is, and how much you want to stop. And it's that thing. It's like when you go for that first jog in a while, the best thing to do is just tell yourself and accept that it's going to be difficult and you're not really going to enjoy it, and there's going to be tough things ahead, but that's part of it.
And you look forward to when it gets easier. When I go for my first run in a while, I always think, okay, I can't commit any crimes for the next 2 weeks because I wouldn't be able to get away from the security guard. So it's really important that I just stop stealing things for a while.
I hate.
And then as I build up my cardio, then I feel like, okay, now you can commit some general crimes, and you could probably get away and juke a few people. So
that's good tips, man. I hate running.
We're here for the kids.
Absolutely hate running. It is the worst thing in the world.
Not a fan. Not a fan. Like, I think what people get out of running that love it, I do get that out of cycling, but I'm also not like I'm not looking for hills like, ooh, there's a mountain, I'll climb that. It's just more like I'm generally pedaling at about 17 miles an hour, and I'm just thinking the entire time, but running, it's like, even with, you know, AirPods, or I've used my in-ears with a Bluetooth thing, it's like doo, 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 like through your whole body.
Mate,
I'm like,
I've got a funny story.
I can't chill out.
Really quick, right? We did this. We used to get gifted from Nike. We used to go to this place in London, and it was like this sick place. It was called Room something, and it was a plain building. You knocked on the door, and you walk in. It's Nike, and there's 3 levels: basketball, football, lifestyle, all these different things. You walk in this room, there'll be nothing in there, and you'll press this button, and all these drawers would come out, and it'd be the latest sneakers. And you literally just go, I want that. I'll have that. And you just walk out and they gift you loads of stuff. We used to get it all the time. And then one time
this is because of the band.
Yeah, the band. And one time he came out, we had like 6 bags each. And they went, oh, we're doing a marathon, by the way, a half marathon for charity. And we were like, oh, well, we've kind of got to say yes, haven't we?
Yeah,
really?
of course.
You've got us by the balls here, mate.
Yeah.
Anyway, we said yes, we did it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was half marathon, but mate, I was listening to music, same problem as you. In-ears falling out, everything just horrible. Anyway, I had the phone in this like patch around your arm, you know, the ones under that clear sort of thing.
I know exactly.
Anyway,
what
the
you're
last
talking about.
3 miles, I'm like, oh my God, this is, I want to kill myself. Just, this is so hard. Anyway, the last 3 miles, my LTA click tracks came on. And this was back in the day when I played it off my phone and there was no backing track. So it was just click. So for the last 3 miles, I was running to dong, 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 dong. And then the next track, dong, dong, dong. So I'm running, trying to not stop, trying to like rip my phone out. Oh, mate, it was the worst.
Oh, it's the best. I love it. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast about Lamborghinis and running to a click track.
Yep.
It was a lot of fun. And for the patrons or the patrons that didn't get your questions, answered on the air, I have them all. So keep sending them in. You can send them to me personally and get that on the Patreon page, patreon.com/drum with Mike and Eddie. Or you can just find that link in the description of this podcast, and we would love to have you. We got more room, but I think for now, what is this, episode 38?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
My dude, our camp is coming up. You better start planning.
I am planning big stuff. You got any tips for planning a course just before we leave?
Yeah. I don't know. Just good luck. All right, everybody. We'll talk about planning a drum camp in next week's episode. But until then, episode 38 is in the can.
Bye. There we go, mate.
Wish you the best, bro.
I'm freaking
Dude,
it, mate.
there's no way your camera is on face tracking. You are on center focus. I know it.
Really?
Is it grabbing your face right now?
Now it is.
I don't. I think you're definitely not on face priority.
How do you AF left? AF. Which one's the face priority icon?
Okay, so there's it's not face so face priority is set in the menu. You're probably on face tracking, but not face priority, so it'll grab the middle. Right. But it's okay. It's only an hour that you were out of focus. It's not bad. But dude, that Shure logo is crisp.
Yeah, mate. They better give me
crisp.
Some fucking money for this shit.
All right, I'm stopping the recording now.
Okay. So
goodbye.